The climb to salvation, the emergency beacon screamed through the frozen atmosphere of Valtora 7. Its desperate signal cutting through the howling blizzard that had raged for 3 days straight. Marcus Chen pressed his cybernetic left hand against the ice-crusted window of the mining station's communication center, watching the swirling white death outside. His enhanced fingers, replacements from a mining accident 5 years ago, registered the temperature through the reinforced glass, -47 degrees Celsius, and dropping. Still picking up that signal, Marcus called Sarah Kim from the control console, her breath visible in the poorly heated room. The power grid had been failing since the storm began, and they were running on emergency generators. It's definitely not human tech. The frequency patterns match Zephyrian diplomatic vessels. Marcus turned from the window, his weathered face grim. At 38, he had spent half his life on this frozen rock, first as a deep-core miner, then as the colony's chief rescue specialist after the accident that cost him his arm but gave him something better, a mechanical limb that never tired, never froze, and could grip ice that would defeat human fingers. The colony of New Shanghai had been abandoned by the TerraCorp Mining Consortium 6 months ago when the valuable ore veins ran dry. But Marcus had stayed with a skeleton crew to maintain the automated systems and emergency services, Zephyrians. This far out, Marcus rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. Their diplomatic cause never ventures beyond the inner spiral. Something big must have gone wrong. Sarah's fingers danced across the holographic display, trying to clean up the signal. The Zephyrians were humanity's oldest alien allies, a peaceful species of tall, graceful beings whose skin shifted color with their emotions. They had been the first to welcome humans into the galactic community 50 years ago, sharing their advanced healing technology and gravitational science. Wars still raged between humans and other species throughout the galaxy, but the Zephyrians had always stood as neutral mediators. "Got a cleaner signal?" Sarah announced. "The source is approximately 47 kilometers northeast, up in the Bitter Crown mountain range." "Marcus, that's impossible terrain. Nothing could survive a crash landing in those peaks." Marcus was already moving toward the equipment locker, pulling out his modified climbing gear. His cybernetic arm whirred softly as he tested the grip mechanisms. The impossible just means nobody's tried hard enough yet. "What's the weather looking like? Are you insane?" Sarah stood up from her console. "The storm won't break for another 2 days, minimum. The peaks are experiencing winds over 200 kilometers per hour. The rescue shuttles can't even lift off in this weather, let alone navigate those ice cliffs." "Then I go on foot." Marcus sealed his thermal suit and checked the power cells in his mechanical limb. "If Zephyrians are out here, they're on a mission important enough to risk everything. I won't let them die because of bad weather." Sarah shook her head in disbelief. "Marcus, even if you somehow reach them alive, how would you get them back? A Zephyrian weighs nearly twice what a human does. Their physiology can't handle this cold." "I'll figure that out when I get there." Marcus shouldered his pack, loaded with emergency medical supplies, portable heat generators, and his specialized climbing equipment. "Keep monitoring the signal. If it stops transmitting, I'll know I'm too late." The journey began as a nightmare and got worse from there. Marcus left the mining station on a tracked all-terrain vehicle, its heated cabin providing temporary shelter from the storm. But after 12 kilometers, the vehicle's tracks became clogged with ice, and the winds were strong enough to flip it over if he climbed any higher. He continued on foot. His cybernetic arm proved its worth immediately, while his human hand quickly became numb inside its heated glove. the mechanical fingers maintained perfect grip strength and dexterity. He had modified the limb years ago with ice-climbing attachments, retractable spikes and magnetic anchors that could find purchase on even the smoothest ice walls. The Bitter Crown Mountains earned their name honestly. Jagged peaks of black stone thrust up through layers of ice thousands of years old, creating a maze of vertical cliffs and unstable glaciers. The wind channeled through the passes with hurricane force, carrying particles of ice hard enough to shred exposed skin in minutes. Marcus had climbed these mountains before, but never in conditions like this. As he ascended, the emergency beacon grew stronger, but also more disturbing. The signal pattern was fragmenting, breaking into discrete bursts that suggested massive structural damage to whatever was transmitting. After 6 hours of climbing, Marcus reached a ledge where he could finally see his destination. The ship had not just crashed, it had been torn completely in half. The bow section hung suspended from an ice shelf 300 meters above his current position, its elegant curves scarred by impact damage. The stern section had somehow ended up on a separate peak across a chasm so wide that Marcus could barely make out its details through the swirling snow. Between them stretched nothing but empty air and certain death. How in the name of terrors, burning core, did that happen? Marcus muttered, studying the wreckage through his enhanced optical scope. Ship debris was scattered across multiple peaks, but the two main sections were intact enough that there might be survivors. The question was which section to reach first, and how to cross between them. His cybernetic arms, internal computer, ran trajectory calculations based on the debris pattern. The ship had been traveling at high speed when something catastrophic occurred, something that split it cleanly in half while maintaining the structural integrity of both sections. That wasn't the signature of a normal crash or system failure. Marcus chose the bow section. First, since it was closer and the beacon seemed stronger from that direction. The climb took another 4 hours, his human muscles screaming in protest, while his mechanical limb worked tirelessly. Twice he nearly fell when ice shelves collapsed under his weight, saved only by the magnetic anchors that could lock onto the iron-rich stone beneath the ice. When he finally reached the hull breach, that would allow entry into the bow section, Marcus was exhausted, frozen, and running low on power for his heated suit. But he was alive, and according to his instruments, so was someone inside the ship. The interior was a maze of twisted metal and shattered crystal displays, but the emergency lighting was still functional. The Zephyrian ship design was organic, all flowing curves and surfaces that seemed grown rather than built. Even damaged, it was beautiful in a way that human engineering rarely achieved. "Hello," Marcus called out, his voice echoing in the alien corridors. "Emergency rescue team. Is anyone alive in here?" The response came not as words, but as a harmonic tone, rising and falling in complex patterns that Marcus recognized as Zephyrian distress communication. He followed the sound through the wreckage until he found her. The Zephyrian was trapped beneath a collapsed support beam, her normally silver skin flushed deep purple with pain and hypothermia. She was tall, even lying down, easily 2.5 meters, with the characteristic elongated limbs and large dark eyes of her species. Her breathing was shallow, and frost was forming on her skin, despite the ship's failing heat systems. "Easy now," Marcus said softly, kneeling beside her. "I'm human, from the mining colony. I'm here to help." The Zephyrian's eyes focused on him with obvious effort. When she spoke, her voice carried the musical quality of her species, but strained with pain. "Human, impossible. No human could reach this place in such conditions. You'd be surprised what humans can do when we put our minds to it. Marcus examined the beam pinning her down. His cybernetic arm could probably lift it, but he needed to stabilize her injuries first. I'm Marcus Chen. What's your name? I am Ambassador of the Zephyrian Diplomatic Corps, she replied, her skin shifting to lighter shades as his presence calmed her. Our mission was classified, but now I fear it matters little. The ship is lost, and with it, any hope of preventing the war. War? Marcus was setting up a portable medical scanner, checking her for internal injuries. What war? The Krathari Empire has been massing fleets at the spiral border for months, Lyrahan explained, wincing as Marcus began working to free her. They seek to conquer the human colonies while your main fleets are engaged elsewhere. We carried the prototype for a harmony device, technology that could end conflicts peacefully by allowing species to truly understand each other's thoughts and motivations. Marcus paused in his work. The harmony device was legend among diplomats. Theoretical technology that could prevent wars by creating genuine empathy between conflicting parties. You're saying you actually built one? 3 cycles of research, the greatest minds of our people working in secret. Lyrahan confirmed. But someone betrayed us. Our ship was sabotaged, split in half by an internal explosion just as we entered. This system, the device is in the stern section, but she gestured weakly toward the viewport where the other half of the ship was barely visible across the chasm. Marcus got the beam lifted and began treating her injuries with human medical supplies adapted for Zephyrian physiology. Who knew about your mission? Only the High Council and the human diplomatic liaison, she replied. But the sabotage device was human technology. Marcus Chen, I fear some of your people do not want peace between our species and the Krathari. As Marcus worked, the ship's communication system suddenly activated with a burst of static. A holographic display materialized in the air above them, showing the familiar symbol of the Zephyrian High Council. But the voice that spoke was mechanical, translated from Zephyrian harmonic language into human standard. This message is specifically encoded for the human Marcus Chen of Valterus 7. If you are hearing this, Marcus Chen, then our faith in human determination was justified. No other being in the galaxy would have attempted, much less succeeded. In reaching our vessel under these conditions, Marcus stared at the projection. How do they know my name? Lyrahan's skin shifted to surprised golden hues. The Council researched extensively before choosing this location for our emergency landing. They identified you as the only human within range capable of a rescue attempt. Your reputation for impossible rescues is known even on the home world. The recorded message continued. Marcus Chen, what we ask of you now goes far beyond rescue. The harmony device must not fall into the wrong hands. The stern section of our vessel contains not only the device, but also the research data that would allow it to be weaponized. Corporate interests within your own species orchestrated our sabotage to steal this technology. The recording flickered, damaged by the ship's system's failures. The device must be delivered to the Galactic Peace Council on Sanctuary Station. Only there can it be properly protected and used for its intended purpose. Marcus Chen, the fate of millions rests in your hands. The message ended, leaving Marcus and Lyrahan in stunned silence. Outside, the storm continued to rage, and somewhere across an impossible chasm, the most important piece of technology in the galaxy waited in the wreckage of an alien ship. Well, Marcus said finally, checking the power levels in his arm. I guess we're not just doing a rescue mission anymore. The choice that changed everything. The storm had begun to weaken by the time Marcus finished treating Ambassador Lyrahan's injuries. But the wind still howled through the mountain. Peaks with enough force to make crossing between the ship's sections a death sentence for anyone foolish enough to try. Marcus stood at the breach in the hull, staring across the chasm at the stern section of the Zephyrian vessel where humanity's future might hang in the balance. The gap is 200 meters at its narrowest point, he calculated, his cyber arms targeting system measuring distances and wind patterns. Even with climbing gear, it's impossible to make that crossing in these conditions. Lyrahan had managed to sit up against a bulkhead, her skin slowly returning to healthy silver tones as the human medical treatment took effect. My people have a saying, Marcus Chen. What appears impossible to one species becomes inevitable when another applies their unique gifts. Your species has always found ways around impossible. Pretty words, Marcus replied, but physics is physics. I can't fly, and I don't have a shuttle that could navigate these winds. He paused, studying the debris field scattered between the peaks, unless his enhanced vision tracked the pattern of wreckage, pieces of hull plating, and structural elements that had been blown across the chasm during the explosion. Some of the larger pieces had lodged against ice formations, creating an irregular chain of stepping stones across the void. It wasn't a path anyone sane would attempt, but Marcus Chen had stopped being entirely sane the day he decided to stay. On an abandoned ice world, there's a chance, he said slowly. A very small chance, but the debris field might provide enough anchor points for a cable crossing. My cybernetic arm has magnetic grapples that could lock onto the metal fragments, and if one of those fragments gives way, Lyrahan asked, then I fall 3,000 meters and become a very determined pancake at the bottom of the chasm. Marcus was already unpacking his climbing gear, checking each piece of equipment methodically. But if I don't try, the Harmony device falls into the wrong hands, and the war you were trying to prevent becomes inevitable. As Marcus prepared for the crossing, Lyrahan activated a secondary communication system built into her diplomatic robes. The device projected a three-dimensional star map showing fleet movements throughout the galaxy. The situation is worse than I initially revealed. Marcus Chen, the Crothery, have allied with human corporate interests who believe they can control the eventual outcome of the war. The map showed massive fleets converging on human colony worlds, while the main human defense forces were drawn away by false intelligence. Meridian Corp has been feeding battle plans to the Crothery in exchange for exclusive mining rights to conquered worlds. They sabotaged our mission because the Harmony device would expose their treachery and end the war before they could profit from it. Asterisk. Marcus stared at the tactical display. Millions of human civilians lived on those colony worlds, people who had no idea that their own species was selling them out for corporate profit. How long before the attack begins? 72 hours. Lyrahan replied, the only thing that could stop it now is proof of the corporate conspiracy delivered to the Galactic Council, along with a demonstration of the Harmony device's effectiveness in ending the conflict peacefully. No pressure. Then, Marcus secured the last of his climbing gear and moved toward the hull breach. If I don't make it back, get on the emergency communicator and tell the mining station what's happening. Sarah Kim is a good person. She'll make sure the message gets out. The first part of the crossing went better than expected. Marcus used his cybernetic arms' magnetic grapples to anchor a cable to the strongest piece of debris, then rappelled across the gap to the next fragment. His mechanical limb never tired, never lost grip strength, and could calculate stress loads with perfect accuracy. It was the human part of him that made the crossing possible through pure, stubborn refusal to give up. Halfway across, disaster struck. A piece of hull plating that had seemed securely wedged in an ice formation suddenly shifted under his weight, breaking free and tumbling into the abyss. Marcus found himself swinging on a cable with nowhere to anchor the next section of his crossing. But humans had not conquered half the galaxy by giving up when things got difficult. Marcus spotted a narrow ledge on the cliff face below him, barely wide enough for handholds, but positioned where he might be able to pendulum swing to reach the next debris fragment. It meant abandoning the safety of his cable system and trusting entirely to his enhanced strength and reflexes. Humans, he muttered, we're too stupid to know when we're beaten. The swing worked, barely. Marcus caught the edge of a structural beam with his cybernetic fingers, the metal digits locking on with enough force to dent the alien alloy. From there it was pure determination and enhanced engineering that carried him the remaining distance to the stern section. The aft portion of the Zephyrian ship had suffered worse damage than the bow, its elegant systems disrupted by the explosion that split the vessel. But the quantum drive at its heart was still intact, and according to Lyrahan's instructions, the Harmony device had been stored in a shielded compartment adjacent to the main power core. Marcus found the device exactly where the ambassador had indicated, a crystalline structure about the size of a human head, pulsing with soft bioluminescent patterns. It was beautiful in the way that functional Zephyrian technology always was. Art and science merged into perfect unity. But what caught Marcus's attention was the data storage unit beside it, containing the research that had created the device. As he carefully lifted the Harmony device from its containment field, the crystal began to resonate, and suddenly Marcus could sense the emotional states of every living being within kilometers. Lyrahan's determined hope mixed with pain in the bow section. Small creatures in the ice caves below registered as bright sparks of simple contentment. And from orbit above the planet, he sensed something else entirely. 3 human ships were approaching Valtora 7, their crews radiating cold satisfaction and greed. Meridian Corp had arrived to claim their stolen prize. The corporate ships were too fast for Marcus to outrun, even if he could somehow get both sections of the Zephyr vessel operational again. But humans had always been better at fighting than running anyway. Marcus activated the ship's communication system and broadcast on all frequencies. Meridian Corp vessels, this is Marcus Chen of the Valtora 7 mining colony. I'm in possession of the Harmony device and all associated research. If you want it, come and take it. The response came within minutes, a smooth corporate voice that Marcus recognized from news broadcasts. Director Hamilton Krauss, one of the most powerful executives in human space, appeared on the communication screen. Mr. Chen, I'm prepared to offer you substantial compensation for the return of corporate property that was stolen by Zephyrian terrorists. 10 million credits, a new home on any world of your choice, and a full medical restoration, including replacement of your entire body with military-grade enhancements. Tempting, Marcus replied, but I have a surrender to galactic authorities, confess to your war crimes, and maybe I'll consider not demonstrating exactly what this Harmony device can do to expose your corruption. Krauss's expression hardened. Mr. Chen, you are one man alone on a frozen world with no backup and no escape route. We have 3 fully armed corporate security vessels. I strongly suggest you reconsider. Director Krauss, Marcus said, his voice carrying the hard edge of someone who had survived impossible situations through pure determination. You're dealing with a human who stayed behind on an abandoned ice world because someone might need help someday. You think I'm afraid of dying for something I believe in? The first corporate security team landed 30 minutes later. Elite soldiers equipped with military-grade armor and weapons. They expected to face a desperate scavenger hiding in alien wreckage. Instead, they found a man who had spent years learning every inch of the most dangerous mountain range on the planet, who had cybernetic enhancements specifically designed for ice climbing, and who absolutely refused to let corporate greed start a war that would kill millions. The Harmony device proved to be more than just a diplomatic tool. When Marcus activated it during the firefight, it created a field of perfect empathy that let every person within its range experience the true emotions and motivations of everyone else. The corporate soldiers, suddenly understanding the genuine horror and determination that drove Marcus, found themselves unable to continue their attack. But the device's most important effect was on Director Krauss himself, monitoring the situation from orbit. For the first time in his career, he experienced the genuine fear and hope of the colonists whose lives he was endangering. The desperate love that drove Marcus to risk everything for strangers, and the deep sadness of Lyrahan as she contemplated the war that corporate greed would unleash. The Harmony field lasted only minutes before Marcus deactivated it to preserve power, but the effect was permanent. Faced with the reality of what his actions would cost in human lives, Krauss ordered the withdrawal of his ships and surrendered himself to galactic authorities. When the rescue ships finally arrived from the inner worlds, they found Marcus Chen sitting in the snow between two halves of an alien ship, sharing warmth with a Zephyrian ambassador, while he transmitted the evidence that would prevent a war and expose the greatest corporate conspiracy in human history. The Galactic Peace Council awarded Marcus the Stellar Cross for extraordinary service to sentient life, the highest honor that could be given to any being in the galaxy. But Marcus Chen returned to Valtora 7, where he continued his job as a rescue specialist on an abandoned ice world. When reporters asked why he didn't accept the Council's offer of a comfortable position on a civilized world, Marcus smiled and gestured toward the storm-swept peaks where he had once done the impossible. "Someone needs to be here," he said simply, "just in case." The Harmony device became the foundation for a new era of interspecies cooperation, preventing dozens of conflicts and creating understanding between species that had been enemies for generations. But those who knew the story never forgot that. It all began with one human who refused to give up, no matter how impossible the situation appeared, because that, after all, is what humans do. Asterisk.